But I want you to raise your hand this morning if you've ever asked that question to someone else or to yourself before. How much is that going to cost me? I've asked it before. Whether it's having a car that's in need of repair, a phone that's no longer working, an issue perhaps with your teeth that needs to be fixed, a pet that is not well, a cart full of groceries to restock the shelves at home. This question comes up for us. How much is it going to cost me? Then when you add kids to the picture, whether your own or the ones of people you love, that question seems to come up a lot more frequently. Growth spurt between hockey seasons, requiring a new set of equipment, a desire to play high-level activities or sports, participation in school teams, events, activities, and even classes now, unfortunately, a phone that needs to be replaced because it fell in a puddle, or perhaps the toilet, new clothes or shoes they have to have. How much is it going to cost me? A question asked in so many places of our lives and in so many ways that go beyond money as well, as we've already heard this morning. Because as we turn to our fifth follow me statement from Jesus, found in Luke chapter 9, we found three people who were faced on that road with the question of, what will it cost me when asking and being asked to follow him? And in each of the instances that we read, it's comfort that Jesus is asking them to give up in order to follow him. To step off the sidelines, out of the seats of being a fan, and to become an actual follower of Jesus. Something that starts in the section that precedes the one that we read this morning, if we look back at Luke 9:51 to 56. It says, Jesus knows that his days are coming to an end here on earth. And as he makes his way to Jerusalem with the disciples, he sends a couple of them forward to get things set up for them where they're going to stay for the night. And they go into a Samaritan town and attempt to follow his instructions. But Luke tells us they were not well received because he was on his way to Jerusalem, because he was a Jewish person. And so Jesus and the disciples move on from there to another town. Now, this seems like a strange reason to be turning away someone seeking to rent a room from you or purchase items from your store for a banquet or to get the necessities to strive on. But we must remember the history of the Samaritan and the Jewish peoples, the great divide, the mistrust, the hatred that they carried for one another. And so presented with this request from the disciples on behalf of Jesus, an opportunity to participate in his story, perhaps to have their lives changed in his presence, we read that they resisted. They chose the comfort of their traditions, of their people, of their history, over the opportunity to try something new, to be part of God's larger plan for all people. Then as we open our passage, Luke tells us that as they're walking along, Jesus encounters three more people. Each is given the opportunity to follow him. The first and the third show an eagerness to do this, saying, I will follow you, but ultimately are unwilling to follow through with their lives. And the second is invited by Jesus through the familiar words, follow me, who when faced with the cost were left to infer it seems were too high to follow. Each of them in the end choosing comfort over commitment. Number one tells him, I will follow wherever you go. But then with Jesus' descriptively strange reply, foxes have dens and birds have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. This person backs down from the challenge to give up the comforts of home. He was excited by the idea, by the possibility of following Jesus, but unwilling to accept the reality. To give up the protection and comfort of the four walls of home from things that would be out in the night air to hurt them. The security of a roof over his head in order to keep him safe from the elements. The assurance of where he would be and how he would get there that comes with having a fixed address. The blessing of community and being where you're known and what you know that comes with being at home, as opposed to the uncertainty of having to rely on the kindness of others to make ends meet when traveling with Jesus. He wanted the front row seat to watch, but not to enter into the arena to participate in what Jesus was doing. So he chose on that day, it seems, not to follow. Now Jesus is undeterred by the response of this first person, moves on down the road and on to the next. He says just two words, "Follow me." The same two words he said to Andrew, Simon, James, John, and Levi with great success. But this time he's met with the response, "Lord, first let me go and bury my father." Now this seems like a simple request. However, in the wording of the original text, it's not clear that this father's man had passed at that time. No indication in the wording that he was ill and it was imminent and would only be around for a short time. This man was asking Jesus in that moment to wait, to put it on hold so he could return to the comforts of responsibility, to allow him to go and to be there for as long as it took to take care of his earthly priorities, to participate, yes, in this last cultural act of responsibility of being of a son, that he wanted desperately to come with Jesus. He wanted to be a part of what was going on, just not right now. He wanted to do it, but also wanted to place the responsibilities of his culture, of his family, and of his current life first. He was telling Jesus that he would follow, but it would be when he was ready, when he felt satisfied with all of the requirements of his current life. Jesus, in responding, "Let the dead bury their own, you go to proclaim the kingdom of heaven," was telling the man there was no time to delay. He required urgency. That to delay meant to choose not to respond, as reasonable as the request was in that moment. That there were people who could carry out that task. That focusing on bringing people to real, lasting, eternal life was to be the priority of his days moving forward. Not waiting around for those he loved to pass on from this life into the next. That the gospel message, the good news, does not have time to wait for him or anyone to be in the right space personally to accomplish all the things that they want to do first. It requires the called to drop what they're doing and follow him, as we saw in the examples of the early disciples. To place serving him above everything else in our lives. To lay down the comforts of responsibility and what we're supposed to do to follow him to where he needs us to be. To not question the cost, but to embrace what is gained. But the man was not able to see this and so chose the comforts of responsibility over the blessing of opportunity on that day. And in doing so, Jesus turns his attention to the third person who is walking with them and who, like the first, makes an offer to follow him. They say, "I will follow you, Lord, but first let me say goodbye to my family." Again, what seems to be a perfectly reasonable request, given what Jesus is asking and all that it will mean for this person moving forward. They're being asked to move away, not knowing where they'll be, when they will get there, whether or not they'll ever be back, how they'll be received, how long they will stay there, where they will stay, what they will be doing and experiencing with him. And so faced with all of that, the man asks simply, "Let me go say goodbye to my family." But again, friends, there is more to this than the statement on the surface. He's asking to head back to the comforts of the people that he knew, to share with them what he was planning to do, perhaps to give them the chance to share with him what they thought, to make sure he had their permission, to get their blessing on the decision he was making, or maybe to talk him out of where he was going. He wanted perhaps the goodbye party that would come, where everyone in the community would come together over a series of days to celebrate him and this decision he was making and wish him well before he left. Or perhaps he was hoping again that family would talk him out of going because there was still so much good he could do where he was with them, offering a little of who he was, but holding on to the comforts and support of the people who he knew. This man was saying he wanted to follow, but wanted to prioritize the relationships of his past over a calling to reshape his and many other people's futures. And so Jesus again replies with an example that perhaps is strange to us, but has a deep meaning to them. No one who puts a hand to the plow and looks back is fit for service in the kingdom of God. Now, this would have been an example that held meaning for their people, giving the work in their area. They would have known that to turn back when plowing the fields would have caused the plow to be unstable, leading to issues with tipping, or seeds not being planted correctly, with a line that would not have been straight and lead to issues when it came time to harvest. Jesus was telling this man that it's impossible to follow him with a divided heart. Looking back to anything or anyone of the world would make him unfit to be a disciple. That as in the other examples, following him was to be placed as the priority of life in order to truly be a follower of Jesus. That to answer the call, to truly be a believer, was to prioritize knowing him over any other relationship. And just as before, Luke leaves us to infer from this passage that the man hearing this left without following, choosing to return to the relationships and people he knew over developing one further in following Jesus. The response on that day to the question, what is it going to cost me, was too great for any of these people to bear. Each of them choosing to prioritize the comforts of this life, tradition, home, responsibility, and relationships over stepping fully into what God was calling them to do. And looking back on it, we can see the error of their ways, because hindsight gives us clarity that is often not there in the present. But before we begin to question them or the decisions they made, we need to explore in our own present the calling we are receiving. Because as we journey through this series, as we explore what it means to follow Jesus, we are being given each week, each day, the same 2-word invitation: follow me. No explanation, no timeline, no vision of what it will mean or look like, no description of how it will ultimately play out. Jesus just says, follow me. Giving us the opportunity to place God and his will at the most prominent place, to make it priority number one in our lives, and to go where he sends us, to share what he calls us to share, to offer what he asks us to give, to embrace the life that he's creating for us over the one we've dreamed for ourselves, to set aside the comforts of what we know, what we have, what we want, and who we want to be doing it with, in order to embrace fully what he has called and created us for. Now, this doesn't mean we will have to 100% give up everything, as Brianna explained to the kids. But it does mean we need to be willing to do that, to choose to lay them down, to place them where they belong, secondary to following him. To set aside the comfortable traditions of our people, of our church, if that is what he needs in order for us to advance the kingdom in the lives of someone else. To adapt and adjust where it's helpful to further the kingdom but not be changed by the blowing winds of modern church culture. To understand that what I want in worship is not as important as the one who is being worshiped. So not everything is for me, but hopefully something is, and that others are being blessed by the rest. And understanding, as hard as this might be to hear, that if nothing here is for you, that there are other places of worship where you can go to be filled. That leaving the comforts of tradition means being willing to come here on a Sunday and hear things and sing songs we might like a little less than others that we used to sing, or perhaps would prefer to be singing, or even to sit in a different spot on a Sunday morning or on a permanent basis if it means someone new actually walked through the door and wants to be a part of what's going on here. But it also could mean being willing to leave this place, this home we have for our church family or with our immediate family, and to go somewhere else for him. To explore a new community, a new culture, a new country. To take what we have and what we know and to set out into a life of insecurity, of not knowing the answers, perhaps not knowing the language, of not knowing where we'll lay our heads in order to bring his good news to people that he's calling us to go and to meet. To give our lives in full-time ministry as a Salvation Army officer, as many in this room have, or to lay that dream down for something bigger that he has in store for us. To offer ourselves in missionary service, to go to remote parts of this world and bring hope, to take the light of Jesus with us wherever he takes us to go. To make new priorities or responsibilities with him, setting aside the things we should do, should be a part of, would rather be doing in order to do the things that he's uniquely gifted us to be able to carry out. No longer using the excuse, well, I'll do it when the kids are gone. Or I already did my time, so it's someone else's opportunity. Or, well, this is a hectic season of life, so I'll just wait until things calm down. Because, friends, there is no more perfect time to do what God has created you for than right now. To begin the process of exploring what it means to live your life in his will. That it may not look like what you'll be able to offer down the road or what you used to offer before, but it's exactly what he needs you to offer today. To take on that new ministry opportunity, to get involved in that group that you've always said you were going to offer your skills and abilities gained through secular schooling or employment for his glory and honor here in his church. To make building a relationship with him and his people, lastly, the priority of your life. To join the Bible study and get involved in a new one. To come out on Sundays when there are other places you could be or may want to be. To prioritize developing a relationship with him in your daily calendar, not trying to fit him in. To fit in reading your Bible or praying or worshiping where you can, but making that the focus and allowing everything else to fall into its place. To see each action, appointment, opportunity, and moment as a chance to deepen your love for him and to share your love or his love with others. To choose today and every day to move away from the comforts of this life and into the blessed mess. The wonderful uncertainty of living your life fully, completely, unreservedly for God. Because as we come back to that original question that I asked, the one the people in our text were faced with on that day, how much is it going to cost me? Jesus' response, his example on the cross confirming, is everything. But perhaps what we need to be considering is not that it's too much, but am I doing enough for him today?